Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to show you a very quick and very simple method to get orcs for Warhammer 40,000 on the table very quickly. You may want to use this just to get a few models together for Kill Team, or if you like this method, you may want to use it to put a green horde together for those big games of 40k. So to start with, I've primed the model white, and there's a reason for this. It's because we're going to be using some washes to try and tone the skin. So we're going to start by washing the entire model with Agrax Earthshade. The reason we do this is twofold. One is so that it pre-shades the model and actually gets into the recesses, as when you're painting over white, if you miss any bits, the white is very stark and stands out. The other reason is this is going to tone down the white slightly for when we come to do the skin tone. So just get the Agrax Earthshade and wash it over the entire model. Leave that to dry, and once it's done, we'll come back for the next stage. Once that's completely dry, we're going to take Abaddon Black, and we're going to use this to paint his trousers, his boots, his vest, and also the gun. Thin the paint down a little and very neatly just block in those areas. So again, we're going to be doing the trousers, the boots, and his vest, and also the gun. Once you've done that, let it dry and we'll move on to the next stage. Next up, we're going to use Rhinox Hide, and we're going to use this to paint all of the areas that have a kind of leather strapping. So that you can see there's a strap around his leg, he's got a belt, there's a strap that goes around his middle that holds on the armor plating, he's got a glove on his right hand as well, so we're going to be painting that, and he's also got some strapping around his left wrist. So just again, thin the paint down a little and just very neatly block in those areas. Don't worry about doing multiple coats of this, as because we're painting over white, it will always be more difficult to get a good deep colour to it. And actually that will help us to have some shading anyway, so don't worry too much. Just block those in as neat as you can and let it dry. Next stage is we're going to use Leadbelcher to paint in all the metallic areas, such as the axe in his hand and the armor plating on his chest. He's also got an earring in his right ear, so let's just block in all of those colours again as neatly as you can and then let it dry. After that, we'll do the next step. Next up, we're going to try and put a little bit of colour into the model, and so we're going to use Averland Sunset just to paint up some of the armour on his shoulder, and also the skull that is on his belt, and the skull symbol that is on his gun. Again, just thin this paint down a little. Yellow is quite a difficult colour to paint, and I'll be showing how to paint it a little more simply in a future video, but we may have to give this a couple of coats, as going over the white it does tend to be a little see-through. So again, just be as neat as you can, block those colours in, let it dry, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Next up, we're going to take Agrax Earthshade and we're going to cover the entire model again. This will help to just make everything a little bit more grimy. It will take down the tone of the white on the skin, which we're going to come over later, and it'll also help blend in all of those areas where the paint hasn't maybe covered quite so well over the white. Leave this to dry and then we'll move on to the next stage. Next up, we're going to take Runefang Steel and we're going to use this as a dry brush all over the metallic areas. So again, referring back to my last video, which was just a very basic showing you how to dry brush, use that dry brush method over the axe, down the shaft of the axe, onto the metal plate on his back, and also just brush it across the top of that yellow armour, just to make it look a little kind of battle damaged and a little worn. Once you've done that, we'll move on. Now we're going to do the orc skin. The reason we've left it till last is if we use the ink to do the skin at this stage and then we make any mistakes with the paint, it's very difficult to repair that by sort of painting over it again. So by doing it last, it allows us to we can always paint over a mistake white and then wash it back down using Agrax Earthshade. So now we're going to use Coelia Greenshade all over the orc skin. So just make sure you give the bottle a good shake and then just liberally apply it everywhere where there is orc skin. Across his face and head, down his arms and onto his hands. Don't forget the fingers that's in the right hand there as well where he has a glove. Try not to let it pool too much, and once it's dry you can always check. If you want to make it a little darker you can give it a second wash, but on this particular instance I've only give it one coat. So again, let that dry as the wash takes quite a little while, and we'll come back and do the next stage. As you can see, the wash is dry and it's give a bit of a shadow and a bit of a highlight without doing any special work. Next, we're going to pick out the teeth using a Ushabti Bone, and making sure you're very neat with this will really make the model look like you spent more time on it than you actually have. Try and leave some of the shadow into the edges of the teeth, but just very neatly pick it out. Just take your time with this and it'll look fantastic. Don't forget to do the fingernails too, as this will help, and sometimes these orcs have teeth hanging from their ears as some kind of jewellery, so don't forget to do those too. Once you've done that, we'll come back to the next stage. Now we're going to take white scar and we're going to use it just to highlight up those teeth and fingernails. Don't cover the entire tooth, just kind of run it along the front edge or right up to the tip, and this will just help it stand out from the green of his face. You may need to use a smaller brush for this, as it's really important that you don't just coat everything. Don't forget the fingernails, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Now we're going to take Evil Sun Scarlet and we're going to use it just to highlight his eye. Now depending on whether you're left or right handed can depend on how you hold the model here. As you can see, I'm right handed, so holding it with my left hand I can come in and do his left eye. The other way to do this is you can hold the model upside down, and this makes it easier to come in from the other side. However, this model doesn't have a left eye, as it looks like he's been a little battle damaged, but he does have a scar across the top of his head. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run that Evil Sun Scarlet across the scar, just to give a little colour to the model and something to focus on. This is your model finished now. I'm going to base my model, and you can follow this, or you can base it however you like. What I'm doing is I'm going to paint the base now, again with Rhinox Hide. The reason I'm doing this is I'm going to be using the Agrellan Earth texture paint, and once it cracks up, it's nice to have a darker base underneath it. So again, as neatly as you can, just block in that Rhinox Hide. Now we're going to take that Agrellan Earth texture paint, and I'm just using a coffee stirrer just to dab it on. One thing to note with this is the thicker you put it on is the bigger the cracks will be in the earth, and the thinner you put it on, the smaller the cracks will be. So it's worth just playing with a little bit of depth and texture as you're putting it on. As I said, I'm using a coffee stirrer here, but you can also use a small flat craft brush just to push it around a little and get round beside the model's feet. An easier way to do this is to do the bases separately from the models and then stick the models to them later. However, I've already got this set to the base. This can take quite a long time to dry, so just leave it to dry and then we'll come back and we'll paint around the rim of the base and tidy it up. As you can see here, it's starting to dry now, and it's dry enough where we can paint around the rim, and you can see where it's cracking quite lightly and quite small cracks around the edge where it's a little thinner, and in the middle where it's still drying, the cracks appear to be a lot larger. Here I'm going to use Gorthor Brown as it fits in very nicely with the desert base, and I'm just going to run around using the side of my brush. It's worth doing 2 or 3 coats of this, as it looks really smooth if you do it like this, and it just gives a perfect finish to the model. Once you've done that, make sure that the cracked earth has dried completely, and then your model's finished. Let's take a look and see the finished model. So as I said, this method is designed to be simple, fast and easily accessible, both for new miniature painters and people just wanting a fast paint job. If you've liked this video, I really would appreciate it if you click the like button, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Let me know in the comments any models you'd like to see me paint, and I'll see you in the next video.